Shut up and sit down.
Hello gang, Colin here, Festa67's workshop, and today we're going to be stripping down this pistol grip airbrush. Just a generic Chinese style airbrush, bit like the Neo TRM ones. But the thing that always puts people off is this trigger mechanism. So we're going to pop this apart, just so that you can see how you can take these apart to do a deep clean, folks. Now you don't have to do this every time, but it's worth a try. So I'm going to lay it out across the bench. Got my tools just off the top of the shot here, and these little valve tools, needle pack, washer screws, etc. And we'll just take this apart, okay? So sit back with a cup of tea, pay attention, and we'll start the ball rolling. So we'll just pop the lid off the cup, put that to one side. Just move my tools out of the way, and then we'll get rid of the crown and the needle cap as well. Just separate them, like so. A little bit of a tight fit this one because, yeah, it's been a while since this airbrush has been apart. We'll just pop them like so across the screen for you. And then we'll pop off the end cap, put that to one side. Try not to drop it, Cole. Yeah, and then undo the retaining Allen bolt, and then pull the needle out. And then normally you pull them out the front, but because this is fresh, it's got no paint on it, I could drop it out the back. Then we just take out the spring and retaining mechanism, like so. Just unscrew that, pull it all apart, separate the components, like so. And then we can look now at dropping the handle and the trigger off, folks, okay? So you want to take off the little connector there. I've got a quick release on this, and I've got a set of PTFE coated pliers there. So I'm just going to use them to release it, back it off a bit. Okay, now be careful when you take this off because there's a little O-ring in there and you don't want to lose it, folks, okay? So just back it off gently, like that. And there's the O-ring. The O-ring's actually stuck in the end of the airbrush there, so I'll just use something to get that out of there. Like so, just pop that little O-ring out. Try not to ping it on the floor. There you go. Let me just put that to one side now. And then you've got a little knurled nut that's retaining the handle. So just back that off as well. And then spin that off. That goes across both threads. There's a little gap in between, but don't worry about that. And then just back it straight off like so. Put that to one side. And then you can slide off your plastic handle, just like so. It's that easy, folks. Now you've got your valve assembly here, which is the brass part. And then you've got an extension that goes down the handle that basically lengthens the airbrush, okay? So it's just their way of doing it. So use your PTFE covered pliers on the brass there. And I want to try and do both nuts at the same time because I've adjusted this so that my valve is adjusted. So try to take it by undoing the top nut and backing the whole lot off. We don't need to go into the valve unless, of course, your airbrush is staying on. Then obviously you want to clean the O-ring in the valve assembly by splitting it in the middle, okay? But we don't need to do that today because it's already calibrated for me. So I'll just pop that to one side and not worry about it. Pick up the airbrush body. Pop the cup off. If you've got a screw out cup, just pop it off out of the way just to make it easier for yourself. And then we'll start now trying to get into the guts of the airbrush. Now what you need to do, flathead screwdriver and pop the trigger off. A little screw head on the whichever side, just pull the brass screw out and then just slide your trigger off and put it to one side, just like that. Now you'll notice I'm laying my airbrush out as if it's an engineer's diagram, like one of these exploded views. It just makes it easier to remember where the parts are. Using the spanner, just undo your needle. Don't need to use a lot of force on the needles. Don't overdo it because you will snap the thread off inside the airbrush. And I'm just putting the needle there between the cap and the cup there, just so that I don't lose it. Now we need to remove this brass nut. Now to do that, underneath the body of the airbrush is a brass screw. You can see the end of it just poking up there. So you'll want to grab a flat screwdriver, which I've just got to one side, and we'll just start pulling that out. So it's just in there. You can see the top of it poking up. And what that does is that stops that block from firing out the back of the airbrush. So get a flat screwdriver and undo this little tiny brass screw underneath the base or the body of the airbrush. Back it off and put it to one side, trying not to lose it, okay? Because that goes into a hole that retains that brass ring, okay? Now I use the end of a spudger because it just fits into the notch at the end of this. Just back it out, lefty-loosey, okay? And bear in mind there's a spring behind it, so it might try to fire out. So just hold your thumb over the end there with your finger and just keep an eye on it so that you don't lose the spring, okay? And it'll just pop out the end there, see it? So we'll just give that a little shake and push back this trigger body. Put the spring there next to the brass ring, and then we can use the spudger just to pop this block out. What this block is it's what the trigger moves against to push the needle back, okay? That will now just leave you with the bodywork there, and you'll see in there that you've got a brass retaining nut that is holding in the needle packing screw. So I've got a special driver there that goes right the way through the back end of the airbrush and goes down into there to remove that. Now I'm comfortable removing these. However, if you're not sure about popping out the needle packing screw, then don't, okay? Obviously, if you need to change it because you've got paint coming out the side of your trigger there, then obviously you'll do this stage. But it's one of them. I need to change this needle packing screw. I've got one on order, so I'm not too fussed taking it out because I shall come back to this and change the needle packing valve, the needle packing seal, should I say. Then using my ordinary screwdriver, I can just drop that out onto the bench. And in there you can see the white seal. Now mine, as you can see, is worn quite back. It's got a little recess in it. So it's a little bit spitty when I spray. So I've got a new one on order. But that basically is you right down to the basic body now of the airbrush, okay? So you can clean that. You can do what you need to do with it so that you can have a nice clean airbrush. If you've got a lot of paint in there and crud, then obviously give it a deep clean. If you have an ultrasonic cleaner, bung it in there. Really give all these components a deep clean. Any small components I tend to put in an old Tamiya jar with some airbrush cleaner in it, and that all goes in there. But I also use a brush. This has got some lacquer thinner on it. And I'm just going over the body, removing any bits and pieces, detritus, etc. And then use a cotton pad just to clean the body of the airbrush, okay? So it is really that simple, folks. And you're just going round your airbrush and you can give every bit of it a nice polish, nice clean, get rid of any dirt, detritus and all of that. And then when we come back, we'll look at reassembling this for you, okay? So the cleaning process is pretty much what I'm doing here on all your different components, okay? Right, we're now ready to put this back together, folks, okay? So we've cleaned everything up. So we can start now just getting all of our components back into this airbrush body. The needle packing screw's gone in. This block, I just want to clean a little bit of crud off there. This is what the trigger moves to push the airbrush needle back, folks, okay? So it's quite critical when you put it back, it's done the right way round. So just grab your body and your needle. Now I've already gone ahead and put the needle packing screw retainer in. I just want to check that the needle itself is a resistance fit through that seal, which it is, okay? So let's just grab our tip and screw that on. Again, remember folks, you're going to be using a spanner, but don't over tighten it because you can snap these off inside there, and you can get them back out, but it's just frustrating if you do. So just a little tinsy nip is all it needs, okay? We can now spin that round, putting a little bit of needle juice on my finger there, and I'm just going to put a little bit on this block body as well, just to help it slide through the body of the airbrush a little bit easier. Now I do this every time I field strip, and then I run it around with my finger like so. Okay, just want a tinsy bit of film on there, that's all you want, and you have it with a square at the end and the angular bit going from right down to left, and I'll show you that when I dry fit the trigger. Okay, and you can see there that that now slides quite nicely. And when you put this trigger on, if you look, there's a little diagonal recess just in that fitting there. You see it? Just going from the top of the right forward towards the left. That's what your trigger sits in, about a 45-degree angle. Okay, so make sure you got that accurate before you screw your trigger in. Okay. And as you see there, you got the angle correct. We can now spin that round and put the bolt in. Okay, so I'm happy with that. This is the spring that goes in behind that block that you've put in. That's important. Don't forget to put it in, folks, because that's what the brass ring sits against. And it just spring loads that block as you flick the trigger back. It then springs back forward so that the trigger goes into its correct position. Now, when you're turning this screw back in, this nut, you'll notice the hole in the bottom between my thumb and finger. There's a hole in the brass nut that you need to line up so that you can put that retaining brass screw back in, okay? It's quite crucial that you line them up. So just look closely, and if you overdo it, it'll be off centre. You want it perfectly central so that the whole body of the screw is going to go in the hole without any sideways resistance. Okay, then pick up your screw, pop it in there, and then screw it in, and that will hold that ring in place and retain that quite happily, that mechanism. So we just fully tighten that home. Don't over tighten it because it is a brass screw and you could easily gouge the ends, but as you can see, that block has now got a nice bit of resistance, and when we tighten that trigger up, it's going to fire that forwards. So let's spin it round and put in the retaining bolt, slide that in there, and then we'll do a little trigger test in a moment just to make sure it's all working for us. Just like that. See? Nice good spring resistance, and that's firing right forward into its off position. Okay? Give it a few jigs because I want to work the oil in, but I'm happy with that. I'll put the air valve and extension tube on, nip it up with your fingers, and then using your PTFE covered pliers, again, just give it a little nip. Bink, done. That easy, folks. Okay, everything's doing as it should. We can put the cap and the crown on just to protect the tip there whilst I'm moving the airbrush around the bench, because if I do drop it, I could damage it, so I don't want to do that. Slide the handle over the valve and extension tube and then put your ring nut on. Spin that round like so, and just give it a tweak with your thumb and finger, just hand tight will do. Okay, then obviously pop your O-ring there in your quick release valve just in the end. Just use my spudger there just to make sure it's seated correctly, and then we can put that on underneath at the end of this tube like so. And again, finger tight will do because you've got an O-ring to seal it, so just give it a nip. You've then got the needle guide. That's got a little cutout in it that slides over that protruding brass nut, or brass screw, sorry, that we put in. So I put a little bit of needle juice on there, and then we can put that in. Now make sure obviously the notch is going over that screw head that's poking out. Okay, you'll be able to see it as I insert it. You'll be able to see the bolt head, and there you go, straight in. Okay, just in there. Bosh. We'll pop that back in, and then obviously pop our spring over it, and then we can put its retaining screw assembly in, just like so. Okay. Again, as tight as you want. I tend to go right in because I like a bit of a resistance on the needle. I like it a little bit stiff, the assembly there. It's just my personal preference, but if you want the trigger with a bit of a looser feel, then you can adjust this to what suits you. Okay. We've cleaned our needle, so we can now feed that through from the back of the airbrush. Just want to quickly check the tip to make sure that it's nice and clean, which it is. So I'm happy with that. And then we can put a bit of needle juice on the needle as well, just to help it slide through the body of the airbrush a bit smoother, sorry. So just put a little bit there. And then just run your finger along, taking any excess off, and then just feed this through, resting it on my thumb there, just so that I don't damage anything as I slide the needle in. And just gently slide it from the back to the front. I pull my trigger back so I can see the needle going in through the packing valve assembly, and then just put your retaining nut on the end there, like so. Give that a little twist and a nip, and you can see the whole body and the needle is moving backwards and forwards. We can put the protective cap back on the back end of the airbrush there. Nip that up. Screw our airbrush cup in. Again, finger tight, and put the cap back on. And there you go, folks. That is our pistol grip airbrush. Taken apart, cleaned, put back together, and then we can now test that on the compressor to make sure we're getting a nice spray. Okay? Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Remember, like and subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell for future videos. Bye-bye for now. Bye.
Hey kid, don't ever let them get inside your head. They'll tell you what to do in life instead of everything you know that you could get. Don't let them guide your life towards regret. I'll fight for what I love with every breath. My past is filled with things I won't forget. I use them all to push me to my best. So treat the worst of times just like a test. If only I could go back in time, I'd tell myself that everything will end up alright. Just push yourself, test yourself, figure out what you like, and find your limits, don't be rigid, always work towards a prime. Surround yourself with open minds, people can change your life. A few friends with intent can help you feel alive. Find a passion, take some action, and with a little time, just be patient, make a statement, try to enjoy your life. They'll try to kick you while you're down,